Our Jewish intimacy series has transformed many lives, and the Ramban is about to transform it again. We're starting a new chapter, a chapter that you wouldn't even expect to be part of Jewish intimacy. It's about proper diet. Proper diet. What to eat, when to eat it, lose a few pounds, gain a few pounds. No. It has a lot more to do with intimacy than you can imagine. Not just what to eat, when to eat, where to eat, but more than anything else, why eat? What's the purpose of eating? Why eat one thing over the other? What difference does it make to God about what I eat, when I eat? In fact, why am I even allowed to eat? Isn't eating evil? I mean, you're killing an animal. The animal had friends, family, maybe even having a favorite sport. Okay, fine, reserved to fruits and vegetables, but yet scientists in Israel recently announced that they've discovered the language of the fruits. In fact, they've discovered the pain of the fruits and vegetables. Many interesting things have come out into the world today, which means that the suffering you're worried about in the animal is not something you can avoid in the vegetation. So what makes you better than them? Why are you allowed to eat anything? In fact, why are you commanded to eat it? And why it's even a mercy of God to allow you to eat all of it. This and much more has a lot to do with your life, your marriage, your intimacy, and certainly your path to Jewish intimacy that will help you become holy. First and foremost, our shiur is for the refuah shlema of Refrain ben Shulamit, Rabbanit Sarah bat Anat, Rabbanit Levana bat Sarah, Avi Mori David ben Nesria, Imi Morati Doris bat Jora, and also for, wait, I moved the paper, I already had it. Also for, to make sure I pronounce it right, Leah Sprinza bat Sarah. Kadosh Baruch Hu yivarech ota, even though her husband already told us that she had refuah shlema after we mentioned her last week. We certainly want to make sure and ensure that we do our best to that she continues to have refuah shlema, her and all of the wonderful people that continue to support our organization, especially by watching these lectures. If you're able to donate money, expertise, any type of things that a person can do to help us spread the word around the world, this is certainly the organization to do so. As one of my students recently said in our podcast that's coming soon, he's never seen an organization, and he's been around Jewish organizations his whole life. He's never seen an organization do as much as what our dear organization is doing, especially that, we're helping the poor people in Israel. We have a, learning Torah in Kollels, hundreds and hundreds of people, Baruch Hashem, learning Torah on a regular basis, helping special cases of need, and even more so doing kiruv around the world. So Baruch Hashem, there's a lot of things that we do, there's a lot of things that we're involved, but it's all because of a Kadosh Baruch Hu connecting us and empowering us with wonderful people that are watching our shiurim, and more importantly, are empowered by them and actually have the desire to be a partner. So Baruch Hashem for you, Baruch Hashem for the Holy Torah that has connected all of us around the world. And just as a reminder for anyone that wants to not only support, donate, you can do a lot of things on our website, be'ezrathashem.org, and also bhtorah.org. But if you want to distribute material, you want to have copies of my Hebrew, my book that's in Hebrew, Rav Ephraim's books, or you want to distribute some of our USBs that Baruch Hashem have been received better than anything else we've ever done. There's 8 different USBs. We distribute them around the world for free. Anyone that wants to buy them obviously can buy the whole set, but needless to say, these USBs are available in the store as well as other things. You have the books, you have the USBs. You also have my favorite, which is these cards. These movie cards have literally saved more lives than any other card in history. That's why we have another couple, 100,000 of them on the way being shipped to Israel and to the United States. get copies of these cards, give them out in your community, leave 10, 20, 30 of them in your shul, in your kosher store, in your markets, all of these different places, because simply put, a person's going to look at it, it's going to pique their interest, they're going to look at this QR code, and it's going to change their life once they look at it, because I already know how many people it's changed their lives. So Baruch Hashem, for all the wonderful tools that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us, tonight we're actually implementing another new tool. Since the liberals from TikTok kicked us out, we're trying something new. We are now live on our app. You could also see us on bh.live, which on your desktop. You can see us also on Facebook as usual. But in addition to all of that, we're live on Twitter. We're live on Twitter as we speak, Baruch Hashem, for the first time. We did it a few days ago, but it was only audio. Today, it's actually also video. So, whatever your preference is, we're trying to get to you. We're trying to do whatever we can. All of you that partner with us, all of you that watch us, all of you that donate to us are certainly partners in everything that we do, Baruch Hashem. So now, this series, the website for the Kiruv store to distribute the material, everything is free, including the shipping. It's only to the U.S. though. If you want us to ship to other countries, you'll have to pay for the shipping, which is certainly not cheap. But you can go to kiruvstore.org. Kiruv is Kiruv store.org. And if you don't know how to spell store, go to ChatGPT, ask him how to spell store. So you want to go there, get yourself some of these cards, some of these USBs, some of the books, distribute them in your community, and be partners in people's life-changing stories. That's one. Number two, we are almost completed with our first season of the new podcast that's coming up. This is a podcast that is a podcast of lives that were actually changed. And Baruch Hashem, we've recorded quite a few stories from wonderful people around the world that have watched our shiurim and have transformed their lives, all types of lives. And you'll see people from all walks of life, professionals, experts, regular, average Joes, or at least they appear to be, converts, people of all colors, shapes, and sizes. And Baruch Hashem, all of them are tzaddikim, all of them are very special. This first season is almost complete as far as our recording part. If you want to be involved in the first season, whether it's to be recorded as far as your story or you want to support it, contact me, and Be'ezrat Hashem will try to do our best to make sure that happens. We're literally almost done with everything that we need to finish as far as the number of recordings we need for the first season and everything else. Also, this season will actually come out, Be'ezrat Hashem, over these next couple of weeks, 2-3 weeks. We're going to give you guys specific dates very, very soon, Be'ezrat Hashem. So, with that being said, we're going to go back to our series. Our series about Jewish intimacy is a series of lives being transformed. Not only lives in the bedroom, not only lives in marriage, but literally lives altogether. Because anyone that has followed this series from the beginning and even implemented a small part of what the Holy Ramban wrote 750 years ago has seen the changes. Has seen changes they could never even imagine that they can see. Changes in their marriage, changes in just the way that their house is, changes in the way their kids behave, changes in simply themselves and how they function at work, in life. Because the Ramban is not just giving us simple tools like some of these crazy people like to give you all types of tools and without even knowing whether they work or not. Both from the Jewish world and the non-Jewish world, the Ramban is giving us a holistic approach, an approach that is going to transform your perspective about intimacy altogether, prepare you for it spiritually, prepare you for it physically, prepare you for it mentally. And tonight he's going to go into even more details by beginning a new chapter in this book, which is discussing the health aspect of your body, the health aspect of intimacy. And this is not just about giving you a few fruits and vegetables to eat. It's certainly not just about letting you know that perhaps you can lose or gain a few pounds. No, there's a lot more to it. It has to do with the entire Torah, and Be'ezrat Hashem HaKadosh Baruch Hu will put the words in our mouth to give you exactly as the Ramban wanted to give us, exactly as HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to give to you. So we start off with always looking into the Torah. into the Torah itself, because this is where we can see God. Anyone that has followed my lectures over the years knows that the way you can see God, literally see God in your life, is by studying the weekly parashah. Because the more you study it, the more you're going to get specific, precise, custom-made answers to your particular problems and questions during that time of the year, during that time of your life. Literally, it just doesn't get any better than that. And of course, all of our lectures always have something in the parashah. Now, Parashat Emor has a lot of different intricate parts. We're not going to go over the entire parashah, but we're going to go over just one little tiny beautiful point that we see right off the bat from this parashah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is talking to Moshe Rabbeinu. And he's telling him about the Kohanim, the procedure of the Kohanim. Again, warning him, letting him know who they can marry, who they cannot marry. The issues of intimacy have a lot to do with who can and who they can't marry. Now, I know in today's world, there's all types of Yetzer in the world of intimacy. But one of the interesting things that I see, which is very, very extraordinary how clever the Yetzer is that the Yetzer has literally entered people's lives in custom-made ways, where all of a sudden the Yetzer makes the person that has converted to Judaism desire to marry a Kohen, even though the Torah says it's forbidden. The Torah has suddenly made the Kohen that has never even wanted to marry a convert, needless to say, even sometimes never even wanted to get married. Sometimes they're even part of communities that are against converts. But yet, the Yetzer has done his deed by connecting what's supposed to be a righteous convert with the Kohanim. And all of a sudden they want to get married. But the Torah says it's forbidden. It's forbidden. There is no permission whatsoever for a Kohen to marry a convert. There's also no permission for a Kohen to marry other types of people, like a divorcee, a Zonah, and all types of other details that the Torah gives us. But here in the Torah, before we even get to the details of the Kohen, which perhaps we're going to go over more later on this week, the Torah starts with the verse where it says, "Vayomer Adonai el Moshe, Emor al Kohanim bnei Aaron, ve'amarta aleim lenefesh lo yitama be'amav, ki im leshe'ero akarov elav le'imo ule'aviv u'livno u'libito u'le'achiv, ve'le'achoto ha'betula akrova elav asher lo hayta le'ish la litama." Here, Hashem speaks to Moshe, saying to the Kohanim, the sons of Aaron, "And you shall say to them, each one of you may not become tameh," meaning impure, for the dead person among his people. Meaning somebody dies, you can't just go to every funeral or to a cemetery if you're a Kohen. Why? Kohanim have unique instructions from Hashem. But there are exceptions to the people that have died, that you can actually be part of their funeral. And this is to the regular Kohen, not the Kohen Gadol. He's even more there's more stringency on him, even more on him. But he says this: except for his flesh, for his kin of flesh, who is close to him, to his mother and to his father, to his son, to his daughter, and to his brother, and to his virgin sister who is close to him, who has not been unto a man, to her shall he become tameh. In so many words, the Holy Torah tells us that if you are a Kohen, and chas v'shalom, one of your family members dies, you're allowed to go to their funeral and be part of it, even though it's going to make you impure, because these are people that are close to you. Everyone else, your friends, your cousin, your aunt, your uncle, your grandfather, your grandmother, none of that stuff, there's no permission. Now, interestingly enough, we see that the Torah says the mother, the father, the daughter, the son, the brother, but it doesn't say wife. Why? Because the wife is called flesh. As the Rambam, Maimonides, says, Ishto kegufo, his wife is like his body. What is the Torah trying to teach us here? It's trying to teach us a very critical lesson about your own cheshbon of where your marriage stands. if your wife feels to you like your own flesh, you feel like you're one with her, you're going in the right direction, you're doing good. You're doing what you're supposed to. But if you and your wife are on such polar opposites that you don't feel like she's part of you, she's just a person that lives in your life. Perhaps you like her, you could even say you love her. But feeling like she's part of you, like she's your flesh? Nah, come on, Rabbi. Then, my dear friend, that means it's not just that the relationship is in trouble. It's not that just your wife perhaps is not making you happy in certain ways. But more than anything else, it means you, my dear friend, are not doing a good job in your marriage. If she doesn't feel to you like she's part of your body, you're not doing a good job, because she's called your flesh because that's what she's supposed to be, according to Hashem, according to our Holy Torah. If she doesn't feel like that, something is critically wrong. And it's best you start solving it before she starts feeling like a roommate and eventually like a guest altogether. And unfortunately, many times there are people that tell me how their marriages, both on the wife's side and the husband's side, how their marriage is in such shambles that literally they're not even sure if they're going to stay married. They're constantly thinking about divorce. They're constantly thinking about leaving, running away, all these different things. The Torah tells us you can fix it, but not just by buying her some jewelry, not just by cooking him a good dinner, by getting to a point of understanding that the goal is for you guys to feel like one. You and him are the same. There is no separation. Now, the Torah double downs on this in its explanation by saying that one of the people that a Kohen is allowed to become impure for if they die is his sister, so long as she's a virgin and has not been with a man. Now, what if his sister is married, but he really, really loves her, she's really close? Can't go. Why? Because as the Torah says, once you have a holy marriage, according to the Torah, that means that the husband and the wife are one and the same. You've become part of each other's flesh. So if your sister has been with somebody, that means she's already become somebody else's part of the flesh. You can no longer consider her as the same as your parents or other members of the family that you're allowed to be, to go to their funeral. May you never have to do this, but unfortunately this is a reality in life. So we see here that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling us that once a woman has allowed somebody to be with her, the goal is supposed to be that they're supposed to be one. They're supposed to be literally feel like they're part of each other's flesh. If you're having all types of promiscuous platonic relationships, all types of perversions that are in people's minds, all types of premarital intimacy, or other words can be used for it, I could say, then guess what? Not only is your flesh not the same, but even your bodies are not looking for the same thing. The goal of Jewish intimacy is to make sure that we realign our minds, our perspective, in such a way that we look at intimacy as literally one of the ways we serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is by no means going to minimize the pleasure, as anyone that has watched this series knows and has implemented it even more so, that it actually improves the pleasure in many, many ways. But the Ramban has told us that Jewish intimacy requires preparation. Jewish intimacy requires spiritual preparation. And one of the things that our Holy Torah tells us is that there is a woman that is forbidden to the Kohen, even till this day. Even if she's a nice woman, even if she's a very, very righteous woman, she's forbidden to the Kohen under all conditions. Why? She's considered a Zonah. Now, Zonah, the typical translation that you would get, is a prostitute. So most women that hear this, they say, it's not relevant to me. Unfortunately, what they don't realize is that a Zonah is any woman that was in a forbidden relationship. Whether that forbidden relationship was incestual or that forbidden relationship was intimacy before marriage, because she was nida. If a woman was intimate with anybody, Jew or Gentile, before marriage, she's forbidden to marry to a Kohen. This is also one of the extraordinary things that the Mashiach himself is going to have to uncover, to see who are actually the real Kohanim in the world today. Because if a woman that is forbidden to a Kohen because she's a Zonah, or because she's a divorcee, or because she's a widow, or because she's a convert, they marry each other anyway. They fool the rabbis, they fool themselves. Those kids are not considered Kohanim anymore. They're considered Chalal. Now, the Arabs call Chalal their food. In Judaism, Chalal means it's something forsaken. It's something that is against the Torah. So, literally, you have a giant dilemma that the Mashiach is the only one that can literally take care of it when the time comes, because there's no way for anybody else to know. The point being is, Rabotai, is that when we speak about Jewish intimacy, we're trying to make sure that we realign our minds with the Torah in order to ensure that we and our children and any other descendants that come thereafter are going to be on the very same path that our holy sages and forefathers before them put for us, because this path is the only good path that exists. Anyone that looks out at the world today doesn't have to be a genius to realize that the world literally is going down the tubes in the issues of morality. Literally, people are spending their entire bankrolls, all of their efforts, all of their skills, all of their time and their life just to make things that are the opposite of what has been normal for the last several thousand years. So a person that starts learning about Jewish intimacy is first and foremost shocked. Wow, this is so different than what my reality was until now. Now, we've discussed many of those details in the last 20 lectures, but now we're going to discuss another detail. The matters of health. Chapter 4 of the Iggeret HaKodesh is called the proper diet for a marital union. Here the Ramban is telling us not only how to eat, how to treat our body as far as health is concerned, but why we eat. Why do we even have permission to eat? Needless to say, why do we have the permission to eat living things and kill them and then eat them? Why isn't that evil? If you go to some of these vegetarians and vegan type of protests, you ask them, are you allowed to eat animals? If they don't stone you, they'll certainly rebuke you for even asking, because according to them, eating animals is evil. Eating animals is wrong. Eating animals is unhealthy. But yet we have our holy Torah tell us that not only is it healthy for you physically, but even spiritually. But yet, somebody dies in the process. Why do I have the right to kill something that's living in order to satiate my health, in order to satiate my hunger, in order to improve my health? What gives me the right over a cow? What gives me the right over some chicken? I mean, it also has kids. It also has a life. The Ramban is telling us things that perhaps you've heard some tidbits of, but we're going to go into details. I would say that this chapter 4 is probably going to be at least a half a dozen to a dozen lectures in itself. It's not going to be the same things that we've discussed in the past for sure, and it's going to be certain things that perhaps you've never heard of before. But if you apply them, if you understand them, and just simply listen to them, it could change your perspective about a lot of things, including your marriage and including how you prepare for intimacy. The Ramban starts as follows. Know well that the entire nature of the foods which a man eats determines the nature of his body. We know by research that the animal from which perfumes are made has the affinity for eating the lavender, spikenard. Here the Ramban, in his first couple of lines, is telling us a wealth of information, but it doesn't seem like it's new information. He's telling us that the food that you eat will determine the nature of your body. Now, from the simple look at it, it doesn't require a genius. Needless to say, the Ramban, that was a Torah genius, a Kabbalist, and a medical genius, to tell us that the food that we eat will affect our health. All you need to do is one time you eat something bad, something spoiled, something rotten, and all of a sudden you're finding yourself making the blessing of Asher Yatzar that you're supposed to do after you go to and relieve yourself in the bathroom 100 times a day. You're fulfilling your David HaMelech's obligation to make 100 blessings per day just simply by going to the bathroom so many times. Why? You ate something bad. You ate something rotten. You ate something that was one day too old. Or you simply ate something that you're allergic to, something that doesn't agree with your body. So we don't need the Ramban to tell us that we are what we eat. We know that. So what is the Ramban telling us? He's telling us even more. We know by research that the animal from which the perfumes are made has an affinity of eating spikenard, lavender. What is this animal? There is a biblical animal that's actually called Chaya. Chaya also means animal, but there's actually an animal that's called Chaya. It's a special, unique animal. It doesn't exist in the world, at least not to my knowledge anymore. Now this Chaya was very special. Why? Because we needed this Chaya in order to get the mole. The mole that was used for the Ketores. Anyone that prays every single day knows that we read, especially the Sephardic Jews, we read the Ketores. Rav Zvichi, Shichyeh, one of the Torah giants of our generation, one of the most humble people that I've ever met, if not the most humble. Literally a Torah giant with monumental works of Torah. About every subject you could imagine, he literally writes 700, 800, 1,000 pages of small print information on. Literally, if it was in normal copy size of normal font size, it would be like 3,000 pages for each book, and he has dozens of them. When I met him the first time many years ago, 10, 12 years ago, I thought it was all fake. But then you spend more time and you start saying, wow, this is, I don't understand. And then when I saw him recently in my visit to Israel in the past last year, literally you're seeing like an angel walk among men. He has a sefer that is about the Ketores and the extraordinary amount of benefits that a Jew has if he says the Ketores every day, especially if he says it with kavana. The amount of wealth that will come his way, the amount of blessings that will come his way. There are many times people that are wise, and I've heard this from our lectures perhaps, that get themselves a scroll. Somebody, a sofer, wrote on a scroll the Ketores, and they read from there. There's also a Segulah for that. But even if you don't read it from a scroll, you read it from or parchment, I should say. You read it just from your siddur, it has significance. Now, this Ketores was something that was part of the servitude at the time of Moshe Rabbeinu, the time of the Beit HaMikdash, and it was unique, not only because of the ingredients, but because of the specificity of the ingredients. So much so that the Chachamim say that if the one who made the Ketores made a small error, he got a death penalty. A death penalty. And as I had a chidush, maybe 9 years ago or so, that why would he get a death penalty for making a mistake? He put a instead of, a quarter of an ounce, he put a third of an ounce. But we're not talking about intentional, he's trying to ruin everything. No, you don't understand. That Ketores is magical. That Ketores is part of the mystical workings of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in helping the Jewish people know where they stand, even if they've abandoned their ways, even if they're confused, because it's literally an open miracle. The pillar of smoke that comes from the Ketores would rise up to the heavens without being disturbed by any winds or anything else, could not move this pillar of smoke. Literally, you would see the pillar of smoke from the Ketores all the way up to the heavens. So, the Ketores had specific ingredients. One of those ingredients is called Shibolet Nerd. Shibolet Nerd, in English, is spikenard. Well, actually, in Greek, it's spikenard. And in English, it's lavender. This came from that unique animal called Chaya. Because that animal, its skin created this smell as a result of the animal eating lavender. So the Ramban is telling us, it's not just you are what you eat, it's good for your health. No. You have to look at it from a different perspective. What you eat will create other things that perhaps you may or may not have considered. There is a Yemenite food called chilba. It's a salad. People say it's very healthy. But there are certain wives that refuse to make it. And there was one time a wife that stopped making it. So her husband said, honey, where's the chilba? She goes, I'm not making it anymore. Whoa, what do I do? Why? Why not? What's wrong? It's good, it's healthy. The Rabbi said, this one said, it's in our tradition. The wife says, listen, I'm not making it anymore. You want to stay married? No more chilba. Why? The smell. Not just the smell of the chilba itself in making it, but the wife has no problem with the chilba smelling like chilba. The problem is that chilba makes the husband or whoever's eating it smell like chilba. It's a very strong smell. And if you're not from that tradition, if you don't have those sense of smell that accept chilba, you're simply going to be disgusted by it. This is no different than, for example, I remember when we first moved to the United States 32, 33 years ago. For the first time in my life, I saw people from different traditions, because in Israel I grew up, it was Jews, it was Arabs. Pretty much, that was it. Everybody's from the Middle East. Once in a while you see an American, but generally speaking, it was Jews and Arabs. You're familiar with everybody's looks. You know the difference between an Arab and a Jew. You know the difference between the foods. You know this. Not much. But then when I came to the U.S., this is like the United Nations. Literally, I went to school. I started saying, for the first time in my life, I saw Asian kids. And I thought they're all the same. To me, it looked the same. Not just from the looks, I don't know, I didn't know there was a difference. Still young, I was a kid. But then one guy said, no, he's Korean. I said, okay, so he's Korean too. He goes, no, what are you talking about? He's not Korean. So, okay, fine. Well, he's not Korean. He kind of looks like Korean. He goes, no, he's Chinese. I said, okay, Chinese. It's not the same. Okay, fine. And then you see another kid. Oh, yeah, there's another Chinese. No, he's Korean. No. Japanese. Oh, Japanese, okay. Japanese, fine, okay. So, you start meeting. Now, one of the things that I remember when I first started working, I used to work when I was a kid, I used to work in a flea market. And, people from all shapes and sizes come. And sometimes certain people come, and they came even if you don't see them. Why? They had this strong smell of curry. Now, in the beginning, I had no idea what this was. I've never eaten curry, never even heard of curry. But I always saw, well, what's wrong with this guy? Why does he smell like that? Why does this woman smell like that? My father laughed at me. He goes, no, they eat this food. I'm like, what do you mean, food? Well, go take a shower. No, that's their food. It's called curry. And for me as a little kid, I'm like, what do you mean? Why? Why does this food do that? And he explained it to me, and then little by little, as you grow up, you start realizing, yeah, to you, this is strange. To you, you may not like it. But guess what? You also smell strange to them. You also are not liked by them because of their traditions and their sense of smell and so on and so forth. Now, so people that eat curry, if you eat it once in a blue moon, okay, it's one thing. But people that eat it like regularly, like many times people from India do, literally, they smell like this all the time. Not all of them, obviously, but people that eat it all the time. Same thing with people from Yemen, same people that eat other types of foods. There are certain types of foods that are so strong that if they're eaten on a regular basis, they change the body of the person. As this lavender, the spikenard, impacted the animal, the Ramban is telling us the food will impact you. And you have to make sure that if you're going to eat food that is that strong, before you do it, or even if you've already done, you have to make sure that your spouse likes that food. I remember one time, my tzadikah wife, I asked her, I remember you used to eat this food once in a while. Why don't you don't like it anymore? She goes, no, I love it. So I'm like, so why don't we get it for you? Why don't we order it? I don't know, why were we even talking about this? I have no idea. She goes, no, chas v'shalom. I said, what? It's kosher. What's wrong with it? She goes, no, it's not coming in this house. So why? She goes, I know you don't like it. I'm like, yeah, but I'm not going to eat it. I don't care. I don't care about this food. She goes, no. You don't like the smell. I'm not going to eat it. And in the beginning, I'm like, come on, you can eat whatever you want. It's no big deal. It's no this. But then I start to realize how much wisdom is in this tzadikah. She knows that I'm simply, I don't like the smell of this particular food. No, she's not going to ask me to eat it. Surely I'm not going to eat it. But for her, even having something that is going to disturb me and could potentially disturb even a half of a microsecond of a micro percentage of attraction, of desire, or of likeness, or anything whatsoever, to her it's already too much. It's not necessary. So this, Baruch Hashem, is one of the wisdoms of women, especially women that dedicate their lives to their husband. You'll see that they're not going to do certain things, not because they don't want to, but rather because a righteous woman does the will of her husband. And one of the things that a person needs to do to reciprocate is to make sure they do the same. Don't eat foods that you know that your wife can't stand, especially if they have disgusting smells to her. It may be delicious to you, it may be delicious to 2 billion people. But if your wife, that is supposed to be your flesh, is repelled by it, you have to remove it from your diet. You have to. Now you can say, yeah, but what if I eat it outside? It doesn't matter. It's going to affect your body. No, but she's not next to me. No, you're not understanding. You may think that it only affects you right after you eat. What you don't realize is that it affects you at the most inappropriate times, the times of intimacy, when your sweat glands start working, those smells come out. This is also why it's always a terrible idea for men to put too much perfume, because scientists have confirmed this. This is not just even the Torah scholars, but even scientists finally caught up about 20 years ago, 25 years ago, in that the most attractive smell that a wife has, that she desires, is the smell of her husband. So if a husband starts acting like a woman and starts putting 3 tons or 3 gallons of perfume on himself, guess what? You're not making yourself more attractive to your wife. You're actually making yourself less attractive, because The attraction is not because of the way you look. The attraction is because of the way you smell. This by no means you should, work in some yard and make yourself stink. I'm talking about just your natural body smell. Same for the woman. A woman that doesn't take care of herself will have smells that are foreign to her husband, that he's not going to like. And that smell usually is something that happens at the worst possible times. So a person needs to make sure that they don't just think about their stomach. They don't just think about themselves. They think about their flesh. Who's their flesh? Their other half. Before you eat that food, know this. This will impact your intimacy. Now, the Ramban is not the only one that discussed food. In fact, food is a widely discussed topic in the Torah. The Ramban was the generation after the Rambam. When the Rambam died and went to Gan Eden, the Ramban was 5 years old. But he was an avid student of the work of the Rambam, even though at times they would disagree. Certainly he defended his work, especially at a time when many Chachamim didn't know the extraordinary holiness of the Rambam and went against the Rambam. The defender of the Rambam was one of them, the Ramban. Now, the Rambam, Maimonides, his Yad Chazakah, or what's called Mishneh Torah, or what's called the Rambam. They're all the same thing. They're all different names for the same work. He wrote a monumental work that literally covered all aspects of the Torah, all the different laws, but he did not only cover the laws of the Torah, he also gave you laws for life. And Ilchot Deot, in chapter 4, the Rambam goes into food, and he starts teaching you about how to eat a healthy diet, when to eat, when not to eat, what not to eat. And the Rambam describes foods that are good for you, bad for you, implying that even though the Torah law would advise a person to eat good foods, there's no obligation to eat good food. You could eat food that's not good for you, although it's going to come at a price, health price. And Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, in his Iggeret Moshe, in Choshen Mishpat, in his Tshuva, he compares this to smoking. Where even though smoking is harmful to a person's health, certainly it's detrimental to his intimacy, because if you smoke a cigarette, you may not smell yourself, but certainly your spouse can, and I can assure you that to them, you smell no different than manure. And the only reason they tolerate you is because they love you, but certainly you're not attractive. People that stop smoking and smell somebody that just smoked a cigarette are more disgusted than anybody else, and even more baffled than anybody else of how did I do this to myself for 20 years? How did I smell like this? Why didn't anybody tell me that I smell like this? The cigarette doesn't smell like this. Even the ashtray doesn't smell like this. Literally, a person smokes a cigarette and he smells worse than an ashtray. Why? Because of what it does to his body. Now, smoking certainly is harmful for a person's health. But there are many smokers, says Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, that are unaffected and continue using cigarettes. In the same token, the diet and a regimen of health suggested by the Rambam is advisable. However, disobeying it is not automatically a cause of loss of physical health, and it's not a violation of the Torah per se. Now, the Rambam didn't write it simply for you to just ignore it. If he put it in the Mishneh Torah, in the most extraordinary body of work written in the last 1,000 years, certainly we have to pay attention to it. Now, the Rambam offers this guidance as an integral part of a person's personal growth, meaning he connects health to both physical health to spiritual health. And his rationale behind putting this together as part of the Mishneh Torah in Ilchot Deot is described in Ilchot Kiddush HaKodesh, in chapter 19, verse 16, where the Rambam says exactly this: so that everything will be known to the men of understanding, and they will not lack any of the Torah's paths. Hence, they will not need to go to search for it in other texts. Rather, they will be able to seek for the book of God and read. None of these shall be missing. In so many words, the Rambam, as he said himself, once you read the Rambam, you don't need to learn anything else. Everything is in it, including this. Now, his work is studied till this day, not just from the religious perspective, but also from the health perspective, where even though some Chachamim say that, this work is not 100%, from biblical or Talmudic sources, some of it is from medical experts of his time. The Rambam himself responds to this and says that since all of these concepts have been substantiated without question, it makes no difference who the author is, regardless of whether the concept was authored by the prophets or by a Gentile. Since the rationale for it has been revealed and proven, we do not rely on the author, but rather on the proofs that have been revealed. This is only pertaining to the health aspect of it, whether it's beneficial for you or detrimental to you health-wise. He's not talking about halacha. He's in essence putting these teachings that can improve a person's health, that can warn a person from ruining their health, but he's putting it in an halachic book. Why? Because this is part of you protecting your soul, you protecting your body. Now, many medical experts, especially practitioners of holistic medicine, see the Rambam's advice not only as medically sound, but as the foundation of their practices. Because there are so many things in there that are very applicable to a person's life. Now, certainly there are certain things that don't work anymore. And the Kesef Mishneh says that some of the things that we see that are not applicable are not because the Rambam was wrong, but rather because the nature of people has changed. We see from the Gemara, many times there are certain things that are said about how people looked, how strong people were, how far they were able to see, certain medicines that were used back then that are a world apart from where we are today. For example, today, if you have a problem with your vision, where you're not able to see from far away or from close by, or perhaps you can't see at all, today you go to a doctor, and he'll give you some glasses, some contacts, or if you want to have a LASIK surgery, and the problem is solved, hopefully. Now, in the times of the Talmud, there were certain chachamim that had a medicine that was so powerful, you didn't even have to apply it on the person's eye. You just had to put it behind their head, and by the next day, their vision is better than anybody else in the world today. Now, we don't have this medicine anymore, but certainly this is something that existed. Shlomo HaMelech, who got the highest level of wisdom given to a man in history, aside from Moshe Rabbeinu, he wrote a book with the cures for all diseases that exist in the world. All diseases that we know of today and all diseases that we don't know of. And for years, the Jewish people benefited from this because it didn't make a difference what the person had. He had cancer, he had an exact medicine of how to fix this cancer without destroying his body, without poisoning his body, with radiation, with chemotherapy, with all this. No. Exact what to eat, what to do, cancer is solved. You have a tumor? Solved. You have AIDS? Solved. Cancer? Solved. Any type of health issue a person had, there was a book of medicine. And it was only until Chizkiyahu that we had this in the world, when Chizkiyahu saw that this book is not good for the Jewish people. Because one of the reasons why Hashem brings disease to the world is because it's to inspire us to do tshuva. It's inspire us to do what Hashem said. To realize that He gave us the sickness as a warning that we're not doing good. And therefore, a person that realizes that no pain comes without sin will start doing tshuva, and then Hashem will cure him. But now that they have this book of medicine, they simply stop praying. Why? They have the cure. They're not even thinking about praying. They're thinking about, oh wait, how quickly can I get this book? Chizkiyahu the tzaddik, Chizkiyahu HaMelech saw this. And he said, no. This is something that has to go away from the world. And the Mishnah in Masechet Pesachim, in chapter 4, the last Mishnah, Mishnah 9, says that there were 6 things that Chizkiyahu did. 3 of them, the sages supported him. 3 of them, the sages did not support him. Out of the 3 that the sages supported him was to take this book and hide it from humanity. Nobody knows where this book is. He hid it, and I believe he used different types of holy names in order to hide it from the world in a way that nobody can find it, other than Mashiach one day. Same thing was done with Yetzer HaKodesh and other things that we wanted to hide from the world for different reasons. So the Rambam is giving us insights not from this book of medicine, but rather some of it are from the Torah, the sages, but some of them are even from Gentiles. They were medical experts of their time. And some of them are going to be applicable until this day, while others are not, because people changed. In times of the Gemara, it says that there was a person had a fire in a building. He was an old man. He had 2 young men next to him that were related to him, that he cared about. He took both of them under his arms as if they were both 2 little, bouncy balls. And he ran out of the building with both of them under his arm. Obviously, there's no human on earth that can do such a thing. Not with 2 grown men. Another time you see that the Gemara talks about how the people were able to see with their naked eyes 10 to 18 miles away. Today, maybe a few hundred yards at best. So the body has changed. But some of these cures have not. And the Ramban gives us these guidelines. And he says, first and foremost, in chapter 4, first halakha, a person should never eat unless he is hungry, nor drink unless he's thirsty. He should never put off relieving himself, even for an instant. Rather, he feels the need to urinate or to move his bowels, he should do so immediately. Here we're getting some basic teachings that really all of us should know, but we don't. We don't think about these things. We're all so busy with all types of other things, and the Ramban is reminding us that these small steps are the difference between a person living a healthy life and an unhealthy life, both spiritually and physically. A person should not eat until his stomach is full. Rather, he should stop when he has eaten to close to 3/4 of his full satisfaction. One should drink only a small amount of water during a meal and mix it with wine. When the food begins to be digested in his intestines, he may drink what is necessary. However, he should not drink much water even when the food has been digested. See, here the Ramban is telling us another rule. Don't eat for 2 people. Don't eat all that your eyes desire, and not even all that your stomach desires, but 3/4 of it. Why? Because many times our eyes desire a lot more. We order food, we order a lot more than usually what we can eat and what we should eat. The worst thing you can possibly do, proven and tested, is go to a supermarket when you're hungry. Why? Your shopping cart will immediately double in size because everything looks delicious because you're hungry. Now, the Ramban is telling us, even if you're hungry, even if you're eating, even if the food is delicious, even if everything is good, don't eat until your stomach is full. Why? Because that means it's already too much. Because if you allow a little bit of time to pass after you've eaten three quarters of what you needed to eat, your body will start digesting and automatically will feel satiated. If you eat until you are full, that means that you've eaten too much, because by the time you've eaten until you're full, that's only because your body started digesting some of this food. And the part that made you full is not the food that you ate. It's the food that you're eating now. It's the food that you already ate, meaning you're eating too much. And this is not in reference to, you're going to be fat, No, this is simply health. He talks about how a person needs to bathe in hot water because it has health benefits. Always eat when you're seated. Never eat when you are exerting yourself, you're standing. This is harmful for the body, he says. An illness will come upon that person that eats when he's standing and exerting himself. When it comes to sleep, a person should never sleep face down or on their back, but rather on their side. On their left side at the beginning of the night and on the right side at the end of the night. This is not only for the reason of health, but also for spirituality. For a man especially, it's forbidden for a man to sleep on his stomach or on his back, at least when it's in his control. But also for health reasons. The Ramban says this is something that is unhealthy. If a person is eating foods that are laxative, like grapes, figs, mulberries, pears, melons, certain types of cucumbers, zucchini, they should be eaten first, in the beginning of the meal. One should not eat them together with his meal. Rather, he should wait until they have descended from the upper stomach, and then eat his meal. Foods that are constipating, such as pomegranates, quiches, apples, pears, should be eaten immediately after the meal and not in quantity. Here he's telling you to look at your eating differently. Look at it from a perspective of how your body will digest it, because that will determine whether this food will benefit you or hurt you. If a person desires to eat poultry and meat in one sitting, you want to eat meat and chicken in one sitting, he should eat the poultry first. Similarly, if he desires to eat both eggs and poultry in one sitting, he should eat the eggs first. If he desires to eat both meat of large cattle and that of small cattle, for example, you want to eat a cow and you want to eat a whole goat, he should eat the meat of a small cattle first. He should always eat the lighter fare first and the heavier fare afterwards. Why? Because of how it affects your body and your digestive. If you eat the lighter food, it'll be easier for your body to digest all of the food. Whereas if you eat the heavy food first, it'll be very difficult for your body to actually digest the lighter food because it exerted all of its energy on the heavier food. There are foods that are extremely harmful, and it's proper that one never eat them. He gives some examples: large fish, salted, cheese, aged and salted, truffles, mushrooms, meat which is aged and salted, wine from a press, cooked food that has been left over until it produces an odor. To us today, this is considered bad food. Any food with bad smell or very bitter taste, these are like poison to the body. Now, in the picky world today, most people won't eat most of this stuff. But needless to say, a person needs to know that this too, as basic as it is included as part of our Torah. If a person is going to eat certain harmful food, he should eat them very sparingly. Only during the rainy season, abstaining entirely in the summer. A man who is wise overcomes his desires, is not drawn to the appetites, and eats nothing of the aforementioned unless he needs them for medical reasons. Such a person is heroic. He's a gibor. If you look at your eating as you're not living to eat, but rather eating to live, the Rambam calls you a gibor, a hero, because you're not going to make your whole life about what you can eat for lunch, or how this specific chicken or this specific sauce is going to affect your taste palates and your tongue, and you're not going to spend 45 minutes just cooking a simple breakfast. Whatever's in front of you, eat it, finish, go, move on with your life. If you could be more particular to make sure that it's more healthy and it's consumed more healthy, certainly this will help even more. But many times when a person thinks about food as one of the priorities of their life, they simply forget about life itself. Almonds are always beneficial. Figs, grapes. Honey, on the other hand, and wine are harmful for the young people, but wholesome for the older. The goal is for a person to have loose bowel movements throughout his life. Meaning, if you find yourself eating foods that are doing the opposite, a person needs to take that into account. Now, all of this was in preparation of this particular halakha. Overeating is like poison to anybody's body. It is the main source of all illness. Most illnesses which afflict a man are caused by harmful foods or by his filling his belly and overeating, even if it's healthy foods. This was implied by Shlomo HaMelech in his wisdom in Proverbs chapter 21, verse 23. Whoever guards his mouth and his tongue guards his soul from distress. Meaning, guards his mouth from eating harmful foods or eating his fill, and his tongue from speaking about things other than his needs. Here the Rambam is telling us, from the wisest man of all, Shlomo HaMelech, when he's talking about guarding your tongue, guarding your mouth, it's not just talking about evil speech, slander. No. Simply put, eating. Be careful with what you eat. Because it's not just eating bad food, therefore bad health. But rather, even if you're eating good food, but you're eating too much, it'll also be bad for you. So here the Rambam is giving us a warning that all of the illnesses that a person can get generally stem from his diet. Now, surely there's more to say. Anyone that wants to go look into the details further obviously can go into the Rambam's Hilchot Deot, chapter 4. But the Rambam is telling us things from a physical perspective, a health perspective. The Ramban, on the other hand, is not only going to touch it from a health perspective, physically, but health perspective spiritually, starting with mentally. Why do we eat? Why are we allowed to eat certain foods? What should we think about when we're eating? Now, the Ramban said, the food that the animal, the Chaya, ate affected its smell. Think about this when it comes to intimacy. Think about this when it comes to everything else in your life. Furthermore, behold the Lord, may he be blessed, whom all his ways are just, commanded us to slaughter animals for our food. And why did he do this? Would it not have been sufficient for us to be sustained by fruits and herbs? And so why did he grant us to have free reign over the beasts and the animals, and cause them great sorrow? know that these are the foundations of the world, that the Holy One, blessed be He, does good for each of His creations, and His mercy is upon all of His creatures. And this is what He says in Psalm 145, verse 9, the Lord is good to all of His the Lord is good to all, and His mercies are over all His works. Meaning Hashem has taught us in this very verse that the slaughter of animals and their consumption by man is beneficial to those animals and is actually compassion and mercy upon them. Here you've taken the logic of liberalism, veganism, vegetarianism, and anti-Torahism and thrown it into the garbage. Why? Because simply put, from the Torah perspective, which we will elaborate on, slaughtering animals, eating them, is not just good for you and your physical health. It's good for the animal. But how could killing an animal be good? This is the first time I ever heard killing someone is good. But that's why the Ramban is taking us not just from a physical perspective of our diet, but also a spiritual aspect of it. Now, there are two mitzvot that are particularly mitzvot that affect the entire body. Generally speaking, most mitzvot affect only parts of the body. As we said in our lecture on Sunday, each time a person makes a sin, they cause damage to their soul that can be seen on their soul. When a wicked person arrives in heaven, you don't need to ask him what sins he made, because you can see the holes in his soul with the different body parts that he sinned with. Now, generally speaking, when a person sins, he sins with a certain body part. So, for example, if he steals, he sinned with his hands. When he goes to places that he's forbidden to going, he sinned with perhaps maybe his mind, his legs, but it's not his entire body. There are two particular mitzvot that affect the entire body. One of them is eating. Eating affects your entire body. Whatever you eat is going to affect your entire body, both physically and spiritually. It's going to determine how you smell. It's going to determine how you feel. It's going to determine what kind of seed you produce. It's going to determine your ability to be pregnant or carry a pregnancy. It's going to determine what kind of child will come from there. It's going to determine many things that sometimes we don't take into account. But certainly, it's not just determining your weight and the shapes on your body. There's a lot more to your diet. Hence the reason why you are what you eat. But it also affects your character traits, how you behave. The Zohar HaKadosh in Parashat Ekev says the time of eating, or the hour of eating, is the hour of war. The hour of eating is the hour of war. Now this could be understood in a couple of ways. Anyone that has learned a little bit about the body's ability to digest, how the body works, knows that a lot goes into digestion. If you eat certain foods, it can either help your digestion or hurt your digestion. Sometimes people have malabsorption, where their bodies are just simply incapable of digesting normally, either specific foods or all foods, chas v'shalom. Certain people have specific diseases that stem from, types of malabsorption, whether it be celiac, that's very common today, or it's other types of digestive diseases. Cures for them are few and far in between from the secular world, but certainly there are certain things that can help, but only after extraordinary efforts and a lot of suffering. Most people that have malabsorption problems usually carry them as chronic diseases throughout their entire lives. Now, so the body, being said that it's digestive, is a war, makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense. But then there's also another war, where the hour of eating is the hour of war in a sense of how this person behaves when it comes to eating. Do you ever see one of these people where when it comes to food, they simply lose their mind? If what they ordered wasn't exactly what they received, all of a sudden, every insult under the sun comes out of their lips. The whole restaurant needs to know that their order is imperfect. The waiter and even the waiter's descendants are going to remember this day that there was a mistake in their order. The owner of this restaurant, however big it is, has to be made aware of this mistake. And heaven forbid the mistake is made at home and somebody prepared him food, but it doesn't taste quite like he likes it, quite like she likes it. They don't hide it. In fact, they make sure to highlight it by spitting it out, showing you the disgust, not only of how they feel about the food, but how disgusting they look when they're spitting out the food, with no care whatsoever about morals, no care whatsoever about ethics, no care whatsoever about anything of how they're affecting and disgusting other people. And it's even worse when you actually give them food that they like. If it was bad to give them food they don't like, you can magnify it by 10 if they do like the food. Why? Because as soon as they like the food, literally you see a person transform into a beast unlike anything else that exists in the jungle. They eat as if they're at war. They grab and they chew and they make these sounds, and they have no care or concern about how they look and how they sound. And they just need to make sure that everybody's out of their way. Why? Because there's food that they like. It's in front of them. And it's almost like, literally, they're fighting a war against some imaginary friend that they have just to ensure that they consume every bit of this food as quickly as possible before it disappears or expires somehow. And it's almost like you want to give them bad food because that was less disgusting than the current disgusting. So yes, there are people that the hour of eating is the hour of war because of their digestive tract. Perhaps it's a good one. It operates seamlessly without you feeling or thinking about it, and you've been merited with such a blessing. Perhaps the digestive tract is a little iffy. It has a bad alternator. Maybe it's missing a few breaks, and you need to visit the bathroom a few more times than a normal person does. So yes, there is a war there. But I promise you, those wars are not as bad as the other two that we mentioned. When the war is coming because of the person's character traits, is bad midot, her bad midot, where they literally transform into animals. Whether they like the food or dislike the food. Excuse me. So eating is certainly a act that affects the entire body, both physically and spiritually. The other mitzvah, as a side note, that is very connected to our shiur and our entire series, the other mitzvah that has to do with the entire body is the mitzvah of kedusha, the issues of morality, intimacy. If a person wastes seed, if a person is promiscuous, if a person does something that is forbidden intimacy, they're not just hurting that part of their body. They're hurting the foundation of their soul, and thereby their entire soul gets impacted by it. This is the reason why, although the Chachamim teach us that a Jew that has sinned all types of sins, but at least protected their brit, did not waste seed, did not act promiscuously, Avraham Avinu will eventually take them out of Gehenom. Why? Because they protected the Yesod. They protected the foundation. The mitzvah that Hashem gave to Avraham Avinu was the mitzvah of Kedusha, the mitzvah of Brit Milah. You protected what was most dear to Avraham Avinu, your great-great-great-great-grandfather, your forefather, Avraham Avinu, will come for you, will get you out of there. But if a person is promiscuous, either with a Jew or a Gentile, if a person wastes seed and is promiscuous with self, the Zohar HaKadosh says, Avraham Avinu, and even the Gemara says, Avraham Avinu will not save that person. Why? He won't see that they're even related to him. Because when a person ruins their brit, a person wastes seed and does not do tshuva, their neshama becomes so deformed, they no longer look like a Jew. Avraham cannot identify this person as anything that's related to him. Shem Yishmo. So the mitzvah of intimacy is something that affects your entire body, both physically and spiritually. Now, if a person wants to start using their meals as a way to not just simply satiate lust, satiate an animal instinct, but also as a way for them to serve Hashem, aside from making a blessing before and after you eat, to at least say thank you for whatever you have, there are certainly certain things that people can do. One is to think about what you're eating before you eat it, why you're even eating it. But one of the things that a person can do is follow what the Rambam said, but have in mind that you're doing Ta'anit Ara'avad. What's Ta'anit Ara'avad? It's called, Ta'anit is a fast. The fast of the Ra'avad. What is the fast of the Ra'avad? Eat, get whatever is normal portion for you. Let's just say you normally eat 1 chicken cutlet and, 2 scoops of rice. And, a couple of vegetables. Right? Let's say that's what you eat. That's what satiates you typically. Eat your food, but don't eat all of it. The last bit, let's just say the last 10%, you could do the calculation yourself. The last bit, which is usually the most flavorful bit, the best bite. The best bite is usually the last bite. It has the most amount of sauce. It has the most amount of, just deliciousness. That one, that part, don't eat it. Why? Just to show yourself and the Creator above that you can control yourself. That you're not living to eat, but rather eating to live. And this is considered, according to the Ra'avad, as a fast. Many people that have made sins, get scared when they're shown how many fasts they have to make in order to fix those sins if they can't pay for them as far as tikkunim. Now, generally speaking, nobody really fasts anymore because people can easily resolve these issues with money. You can do tikkunim, which anyone wants to learn about the topic, go to the website tikkunabrit.live. Over there we have an entire write-up and also details of the different tikkunim. tikkunabrit.live. Different sins require different corrections, different tikkunim. Each one a certain amount of fast. This is what our sages have taught us. Now, a person hears he has to fast 84 times every time he wasted seed in his life. He just thinks about his 20th year in life, 21st year in life. He simply cannot even count that high of how many tikkunim he has to do, how many fasts he has to do. So you can resolve it with money. If you have money, you resolve it with money. Now, if you don't have much money, then do whatever you can. Do a monthly plan, a weekly plan. Just show Hashem you care. And certainly, this is a mitzvah that tshuva, part of tshuva that hurts, but it's supposed to hurt. Just like you hurt your neshama, the tikkun is to hurt your pocket. This, by the way, is the reason why we do a fast of Estel. Why do we do a fast of Estel? What does a fast have to do with Haman? What does a fast have to do with everything, the whole holiday? Because anyone that has studied the Megillah knows that the whole decree of evil that was brought to the world was because the Jewish people, including the rabbis of that generation, went and celebrated at the feast of Achashverosh, justifying it because the food was kosher. The king was celebrating, even though he was celebrating that the Bet HaMikdash wasn't built. He was celebrating against the Torah. He was celebrating against God. He was celebrating against the Jewish people. They figured, listen, it's kosher food. Let's at least show face. Mordechai Yehudi told them not to go, and they didn't listen. And at that time, there was a decree that Hashem was going to give Amalek the power to destroy Am Yisrael. This is the reason why Esther, that was a prophetess, told Mordechai, tell Am Yisrael to fast for 3 days. Why not just pray? Why not just give tzedakah? Because the tikkun for eating when you weren't supposed to eat is to not eat when you certainly can eat. So we see from here that eating or not eating or controlling eating certainly has a lot of value in the world of Judaism. In fact, if you look at the Shulchan HaTahor, you see that there's a lot more to kashrut than people can imagine. If you go to Shulchan HaTahor, Ilchot Trefot, the laws of forbidden animals, forbidden because they didn't die the right way, from sickness and things like that. In Siman Samech 60. Din be'ema she'achla sama mavet. What is the law to a be'ema, a cow, that died after eating poison? It ate poison, died. It's a kosher animal, no? Cow is kosher. The Rama says, in addition to the fact that we're not allowed to eat this animal, because it died in the wrong way and so on, he says that an animal that only ate forbidden foods, non-kosher foods, throughout her entire life, even if she's killed the right way, you still can't eat it. Meaning, if she ate a combination of food that is allowed, that's kosher, if you will, vegetables, fruits. And she also ate some forbidden foods. She ate worms and maggots and bugs and, fats of different animals. If she ate both, you're allowed to eat her. But if she only was fed, she only ate forbidden foods throughout her life, she only ate the fats of other animals, she ate other animals, she ate worms, maggots, she never ate fruits, vegetables, only ate forbidden foods, the Rambam says, not allowed to eat her. Why? She's considered like she's poisonous. So here we see that when it comes to kosher, it's not just about the animal in itself fitting the signs of kashrut, it's also what it's fed, how it's raised. Because just like we are what we eat is what it eats. Now, Rabbi Yaron Rata, who put extraordinary works of Torah into the world, the three Sfarim, the Shomer Emunim, the Yetzer HaKodesh, which has to do with morality, issues relating to Kedusha, to wasting seed. A lot of the information that we know comes from there. And also he wrote a sefer called Yetzer HaKodesh. And this has to do, the Shulchan HaTahor. Shulchan HaTahor. This Shulchan HaTahor is actually about food. But what about food? But how the food and the eating of the food could either raise your neshama to extraordinary spiritual heights or bring it down to the bottom of the spiritual sewer. See, here Rabbi Yaron Rata says that what you eat is not just physical health, but spiritual health, where you could literally use this food to go to extraordinary heights of servitude of Hashem, elevate your neshama, and elevate the food, or you could literally destroy your neshama and even hurt the food itself. How could you hurt the food itself? The Rambam says that Hashem is merciful to everyone, as David HaMelech is quoted saying in Tehillim. Yet, from logic, you have to ask, how is it mercy to slaughter animals? Okay, it's a kosher animal, and you're going to say, yes, but scientifically speaking, the kosher slaughter doesn't hurt the animal because when you slice the neck, specifically in that area, by the time the blood that's remaining in the canal over there arrives to the brain, the animal is already dead, so it doesn't feel the pain. Yes, but it's still dead. So you can't say, oh, it's good to kill animals because it doesn't feel pain. So you could say that about people. If they don't feel the pain of you putting some needle into them, that means it's good to kill people? No. Whether something feels the death or doesn't feel the death doesn't make it good or bad. Certainly, there's a level of cruelty that's forbidden in Judaism, but we're not eating animals, and in fact commanded to eat animals, because it doesn't hurt them. The fact that it doesn't hurt them doesn't make eating them good. In fact, even if there was no way to slaughter them, kill them in a painless way, we'd still be commanded to eat them. Not only because it's part of our and their role in the world, but rather because it is an act of mercy from God for us to consume these animals. What's merciful about it, though? The Rambam says, our logic will tell us that if it was just about eating to sustain us, eating fruits and herbs should be enough. But yet Hashem positioned us in a way where we have free reign over the beasts and the animals, and we cause them great sorrow by ending their life. But yet this is an act of mercy. What's merciful? The Arizal, in his extraordinary work, Shara Gilgulim, that was written based on his work, based on his teachings, he gives the world a perspective that is part of the foundation of Judaism, where one who does not believe it will always have unanswered questions that could easily transform a person from religious to heretic in 5 seconds or less. Because if you were to tell me that we are allowed to eat animals because we eat them and it's painless, it's technically heresy, because it's not true. Even though it's painless, we're not permitted to eat them because it's painless. In fact, you cannot say the same thing about other things, because even if the painless was the reason of why we're allowed to eat animals, then you cannot give me the same answer of why we're allowed to eat fruits and vegetables. You can say, yeah, well, fruits and vegetables don't feel pain. Not according to recent science, where a group of scientists have confirmed what already Cleve Baster said many decades ago about how flowers and all types of trees and fruits and pretty much all life has signs of life, has feelings, has measures of pain. In fact, a recent group of scientists based out of Israel reported that they have discovered a way to hear the sound that's made by the fruits and the vegetables, where it's at a certain level of sound that is not heard by human beings. But they have machines that have identified exactly how to measure what these beings, what these living beings, whether it be fruits, vegetables, trees, plants, and otherwise, what sounds they're making. And in fact, identify sounds of pain, agony, communication. Now they're working on learning how to interpret what they say, what they're transmitting, because they've identified that there's a language there. It's not just, aimless, nonsensical sound. When you cut the tomato, or the potato, or the apple, there are certain sounds. And decades before them, we already knew that different equipment was used to measure the sound that trees make, the sound that flowers make. Not just if you hurt them physically, but even hurt them emotionally. Where it's not just about cutting them or burning them, but even thinking negatively about them, about you have a prettier tree or a prettier flower. There's a book I read years ago called The World of Plants, The Secret World of Plants, based on the work of Cleve Baster. Very interesting book. And we discussed it in our Torah, Science, and Wisdom of the Sages film. Point being is that even if you were to say that the reason why we're allowed to eat animals is because the way we kill them is painless, you cannot use that same reason in fruits and vegetables, because we have now multiple groups of scientists over the last several decades that have confirmed in different ways that not only are these fruits and vegetables and trees and other things alive, but they have pain. And when we eat them, it's extraordinarily painful. So if you are going to say, I'm a vegetarian, I'm a vegan, I'm a something, and I don't eat animals because I don't want to inflict pain on them, then you have to address the question of what makes the animal better than the fruit. Because if the animal is better than you, where you're not allowed to eat it, then what makes you better than the fruit? Because the fruit is expressing no less pain than the animal. So it's not just the food that you eat and the shoes that you wear and the belts that you have and a different equipment that you have, whether it's the plastics and the rubbers and the perfumes and the pastes and the different byproducts that come from animals, whether you like it or not. But guess what? The trees and the fruits and the vegetables are suffering no less. So why is it okay there and not okay there? So we see from here that a person that distorts the Torah and starts making a new world will only find themselves in the same dilemma. They don't have an answer. And in fact, as the Rambam says, that if it were not for the Torah, eating would be evil. Eating would be evil. Not eating animals, eating would be evil. This is the conclusion I learned from Refrain. Eating is evil, but then we need to sustain life. So what makes it not only permissible, but in fact an act of mercy? Permissible, we know the Torah gives us the permission to eat fruits and vegetables and eat specific animals that are kosher animals, that also are slaughtered kosher and kept kosher. Fine. But the second dilemma we've been talking about for the last 15 minutes needs to be addressed. Where's the mercy? The Arizal taught this, and in chapter 9 of Shara Gilgulim, he says as follows: also, know that sometimes a man will reincarnate into the body of a woman because of some sin, such as homosexuality or something similar. This woman, the reincarnation of the male soul, will not be able to conceive and become pregnant, lacking the level of Mai Nukvim, which is a female waters, to ascend and receive drops of Mein Duchin, the opposite. This woman requires great merit to be able to become pregnant and give birth. There's no other way except for the soul of a woman, of another female, to go into her besod ibul, with the strength of this partner with her. She will be able to elevate my nukvim to conceive and give birth. Here, the Arizal gives us an answer to a dilemma that is in the world, perhaps with or without our knowledge, where sometimes you have certain women cannot bring children to the world. And he says that is not because of your physical health, but rather because of your spiritual health, whereby in your previous life, you were a male that made sins of acting like a female, practicing homosexuality, LGBTQ, Now, this was written 500 years ago, so LGBTQ is nothing new. There's even poskim that discuss transgender 900 years ago. But the point being is that we see that the sins of the past affect the present. How? This person that made this specific crime against God of homosexuality, part of their rectification was to reincarnate into another new body, a body that is the opposite of the nature of the soul. The soul is male, but the body now is female. And part of the tikkun for acting like a female is to be a female, and even more so, to suffer the pains of the female, which there's no greater pain than not having children. And he says that the only rectification for this person is not a physical rectification, but rather a spiritual rectification where they have to do a lot of mitzvot, do an extraordinary amount of tshuva, sanctify themselves, and make sure that their partner, their husband, also sanctifies themselves. Because that will bring them enough merit to bring a child to the world. So what does it have to do with the animals? Well, first off, we see that none of us are here for the first time. We've all lived here before. All of the souls of Israel were at Mount Sinai, meaning they're reincarnated. Whoever didn't complete their tikkun and go to heaven as a righteous person had to come back, unless they did enough bad where they have no right to come back and they're in Gehenom forever. But part of the rectification is to come back into this world and fix what was broken. Fix what was made as a mistake. If the person had immorality on their list of sins, they got certain punishments. If part of that immorality was homosexuality, reincarnating as a woman could be part of the tikkun. It's no surprise that many people say that they feel like women. This does not mean that they're allowed to act like women if they're men, but quite the opposite, that if they're men acting like women, even if they have a female soul, their only correction is to act like a male, is to do what they're supposed to do in this carnation and not try to do something that they were supposed to do in the previous one. So we see from here that the souls of people come back to this world, reincarnate, a gilgul. Furthermore, in chapter 22 of Shara Gilgulim, the Arizal elaborates further. And he says the following: there's reincarnation as a punishment, not just as a tikkun. After the death of a person, they take payment for all of his sins before they put him in Gehenom. Meaning, reincarnation is not after Gehenom, but rather in order to have merit to go to Gehenom. Assuming they're going to Gehenom for a certain amount of time, and not forever, in order to have the merit to go to this horrible sentence, they have to do something else, which is to come back to this world again. But it's not always as a human being. There are many forms of punishment, and all of them, says the Arizal, are called gilgulim, reincarnations. Meaning he can reincarnate into something lifeless, vegetation, animal, or into a person. Almost the majority of people will not escape these reincarnations. In so many words, he's saying that everyone is, in so many words, a reincarnation of somebody that lived in the past. There are very few new souls. And it's easy to identify new souls because they're extraordinarily holy already from the beginning. The reason is because, says the Arizal, a person cannot receive punishment until he exists physically as a body with soul. Then, once they reincarnate, He can bear and feel the pain and thus atone for his sins. However, according to the extent of his sin will be the way in which he reincarnates, as vegetation or as an animal. See, here we see that a person could have lived in the world, had a wife, kids, she had a husband, kids, lived life, did what they did. They go up to the Beit Din of Shamayim after their life is taken from them. The account says that they have certain mitzvot, good, but they also have certain sins. And the sins warrant punishment. Perhaps not a permanent punishment, a forever punishment. At least they kept Shabbat. They didn't do sins that, like idolatry, that are irreparable unless you do tshuva. You can't repair them after you die. So they made certain sins, horrible sins. They have to come back to this life. But they can come back to this life not as a human, but rather as something else. Something that's lifeless, such as a stone. Did you ever see the stones in the desert that move? There are such stones. We showed some of them in our movie, Genom. He can come back into this world as a plant. Did you ever see those videos where people speak to plants and the plants move? There's one particular extraordinary video that was made in Israel. A secular woman, completely secular, had a death in the family, and all of a sudden one day she passes by and she sees the flower starts to move and she feels something. She moves away and the flower moves even more, as if calling her attention. She starts talking to the flower and the flower starts communicating to her, literally moving, excited to see her. Based on certain words she says, other people come, it doesn't do anything for them. Only her. She asks questions and responds. Unbelievable. I saw this with my own eyes. And there are many stories like this. A person can come back into the world as a plant. A person can come back into the world as an animal. Kosher animal, non-kosher animal. Could be a dog. If he was a Jew intimate with a non-Jew, he's coming back as a dog. Whether he's going to be a poodle or a pit bug remains to be seen. But needless to say, he's coming back as an animal if he didn't do tshuva. Even if he was intimate with a non-Jew even one time, and he didn't do tshuva, he has to come back as a dog. And guess what? The non-Jew is with him. She doesn't leave him. Needless to say, the same thing goes for women. They're intimate with non-Jewish men. Other times, he come back as a cow, come back as a goat. Different animals. There's a story that we have from one of the students we have in Israel that she herself wrote the story, things that happened to her after she heard things from our lecture about how the cat in our house was a gilgul. That after she told the cat what we said in the shiur, which is machulecha, 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 I forgive you, I forgive you, I forgive you, the cat went and killed himself. Meaning he completed his tikkun. A person can come back into the world as an animal. A person can come back into the world as a medaber. What's a medaber? A person. And then a person can come back into the world as a Jew. So here we see that there are nearly a half a dozen different types of reincarnations, or levels of reincarnations. And the Arizal writes about this. And he says as follows: a righteous person, however, as a result of his deeds and the mitzvot he performs through eating and similar activities, has the ability to distill out an additional portion from the level of the inanimate, and elevate it to the level of vegetation, then to the level of the living animals, and finally to the level of humans. This has been explained in Shara Mitzvot, Parashat Ekev, referring to the mitzvot of Birkat HaMazon. Here, the Arizal says, what happens to those animals? How do they fix themselves? What happens to those fruits? How do they fix themselves? What happens to that stone? How does it fix itself? How does it go back to being a human? Because surely you can't fix everything by being a stone or a plant. So if a person has been reincarnated into an inanimate, such as water or stone, from what we understand, it's typically just a time sentence. It's a certain amount of time that they have to suffer as this. Or they have to be consumed or used at some point or another. When they are a vegetation, they have to be consumed typically. And if they're consumed by a righteous person that has the right kavana when they're eating, that makes the right blessing, that in itself can elevate that soul that's inside a fruit 1, 2, or even 3 levels. Meaning that that fruit could go, instead of just going up 1 level, if a real righteous person eats it with the right kavana, he could be elevated multiple levels all the way to being a Jew, reincarnating as a Jew. If it's not a righteous person, they could usually reincarnate into 1 level higher, where the fruit will turn into an animal. And then it has to be Tikkun again. How does the animal fix itself? Either it's a certain amount of time, if it's a non-kosher animal, or if it's a kosher animal, it has to be slaughtered in a kosher way and eaten. And if a righteous person eats it with the right kavana, with the right blessings, he can elevate that animal not only to turning back into a human, i.e. a Gentile, Noahide, but rather skip that step and become a human right away. An evil person, though, as a result of his action, causes the opposite, lowering the sparks of Kedusha, not elevating them. There are types of sins that cause a portion of the person to descend to the level of the inanimate, or until vegetation, or to the level of animals. And therefore, corresponding to this, an evil person after his death may reincarnate into a silent rock based upon the sin he had committed while he lived. An evil person may reincarnate into vegetation, or one can reincarnate into an animal, since as a result of his sins, he is comparable to animals. On the same level do they stand, similar to each other. Here he says if a person acts like an animal, eats like an animal, procreates like an animal, practices is all of his desires like as if they're instincts. You act like an animal, you'll come back as an animal. Simple. And if an evil person consumes something, guess what? They could not only not fix these other souls that are already part of being punished, they can actually make their matters worse. And of course, all of this is precise judgment from above of why Hashem allows this evil person to eat this fruit that's already suffering, or this cow, or whatever it is. All of it is precise judgment from above. The point being is that Megalgilim zchut al yedei zakai v'chova al yedei chayav. Hashem gives merit to those that deserve the merit, and obligation, problems, to those that deserve problems, those that earn the problems. Those who reincarnate into these reincarnations remain in that state for a set time until the sin has been eliminated that caused him to reincarnate into vegetation. When the time ends, then he ascends and reincarnates into an animal. And when that time is complete, he ascends and reincarnates into an actual person. So here we see that the Arizal literally gave us clear information of reincarnation, and certainly there's much, much more beyond the scope of this shiur that he discusses. But here we're touching the surface. We're touching the surface and discovering that nothing is what it appears. Rather, if a person looks at it from a perspective of Torah, not only do they see that there is a mitzvah obligation to eat certain foods, to eat certain foods in certain ways, to make certain blessings before and after, but rather it's a humane obligation to consume these fruits and vegetables, to consume these animals that are permissible, because you're their last hope to go to a higher level. They don't want to stay a cow. They don't want to stay a peach. They don't want to be a banana. And they certainly don't want to remain a rock, because their heart was a rock against God when they were alive as a human. You consuming them in the ways of the Torah is their only hope and way to be elevated again to what their former self used to be. Just this time, do better. You see, Rabotai Karim, the subject of reincarnation is not just something that Judaism believes in. It is literally a basic fundamental issue that if you don't believe it, you're always going to have unanswered questions, not just about the different stories in the Torah and why certain things happen to certain people, but rather why what's happening in the world is happening and why it's happening to certain people, and why we are not just different than the nations, we're even different than our former self. And our goal in this world is to elevate ourselves to where we were supposed to be in the first place. Part of that job is going to be through eating. Part of it is going to be through intimacy. If a person perfects their attitude and their hashkafa, their ideology about both, they could literally be a person that is correcting every mistaken step they or anything around them has made each and every single day of their life. If a person continues to ignore it, reject it, or simply live as if it doesn't exist, they're not only missing an opportunity to fix a lot of things that were broken with other people, with other souls, but they're leaving part of themselves broken. Because certainly, part of your neshama has to know this part of the Torah in order to know what else it needs to fix. The Holy Torah has everything in it. Afochba ve'afochba dekulaba. The Ramban brought us to a completely new world, letting us know that you're not only what you eat, there's a reason why you're allowed to eat. And if it were not for the Holy Torah and its details, eating altogether would be deemed evil. But because the Holy Torah tells us what to eat, when to eat it, and even why we eat it, and how all of it is part of the ultimate good of the Creator above, then certainly our eating, just like our intimacy, can turn into something holy as part of our servitude of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Thank you very much for learning with me. May Hashem bless each and every single one of us to make the next bite count, the next act of intimacy matter, the next blessing raise something from what it was to what it should be, including ourselves. Share this, apply this, and always remember, the whole point of why we're here is to be holy.
Hello everyone, I'm Sunny Gigi from the Mitzvah Obligation organization. And I'm very excited to share that we're working on a new project, a very inspiring podcast called Returning to Hashem. Each episode is going to feature a special guest who will share his tshuva journey and amazing events that took place in their lives in order to return to Hashem. If you've been inspired by Rabbi Reuven, Rabbi Refrain, or by the organization, I invite you to share your story and give our fellow Jews chizuk and hope that they too can follow in the same path. If you're interested, please send an email to sunny@bizathashem.org. Thank you for all your support. May Hashem strengthen us all to do tshuva every day.